Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Fiona. If you are new here, we are back with another monthly reading wrap-up of mine, and today we're going to be talking about all of the 10 books that I read in October. October was such a good reading month for me, so I'm so excited to get into talking about all of the books that I read. I just really enjoyed reading this month. I found so many good books. A lot of these are rated really highly, so it was just such a good month of reading, and I was always itching to pick up a book rather than being on my phone or watching shows or anything like that, which always just feels great. I definitely read a lot more books than I have in the last few months, so that always feels good, and I'm so excited to get into sharing them all with you. But let's get into the stats of what I read so far. So I read 10 books this month, 6 romance, 3 fantasy, and 1 dark academia, which I did end up DNFing, but I'm still counting that towards my 10 books because I did get to 70%. So let's get into all of the books I read this month and all of my reviews, ratings, everything like that, how I felt about them all. So I started off the month by reading Daisy Hates, which is the second book in the Magnolia Parks universe series. If you haven't heard of Magnolia Parks, basically it's like a Gossip Girl, but even more drama, more high stakes, and they're in London. So it's like rich socialite drama, and Daisy Hates follows Daisy Hates, who is kind of a part of like the gang lord mob scene. She's raised by her brother, who is a gang lord, so things ensue with that. There's lots of crazy romance, crazy drama, everything in between, and I love this so much. I wasn't obsessed with the first Magnolia Parks book. I did enjoy it a lot. I love the toxicity of all of these books so much in the craziest way, but I think I am a Daisy girl. I ate this up. I like really related to her in kind of the weirdest ways. Obviously not the gang lord stuff, but just there was parts where I was like, wow, that is so hard-hitting, and I wasn't expecting that from these books. I'm also just obsessed with Jessa Hastings' writing. These are so beautifully written. You can really tell that everything has a purpose, and there's so many metaphors and just beautiful like lyrical lines. Also, just know going into these that it's not some like beautiful romance. Everyone is so toxic and flawed in so many ways, so it's not for the weak, but I live for the drama in them, and if you love Gossip Girl, all that drama, you will like these, and I'm really excited to get into the rest of the series. I ended up giving this a 4.75. I loved it that much, and I just really loved Daisy's story and her life and everything. I really just feel for Daisy so much. Didn't give it a 5 stars because I'm just not, I think about it a lot, but not enough. Like, I definitely don't remember every little detail. There is scenes that I think about from this, but it hasn't like stuck with me so much. But I do love it, and I love this series. I feel like overall this will be a 5-star series, but none of them have been 5-star books so far. So that's how I feel about this. Kicked off the month with a great start. This was also the month of me being obsessed with my Kindle. I think I only read 3 physical books this month out of 10. I've just been obsessed with my Kindle. It's me and my Kindle against the world, and I think I just read so much faster on it, and it's so much easier reading a physical book, and I never thought I would say that. I really didn't, but I love this thing. So the next book I half read, half listened to is Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt, and I feel like maybe I didn't give this book enough of a chance because I listened to so much of it. I consider listening to an audiobook reading and counting it towards my reading goal, but I do feel like I don't rate books as highly as maybe they would be if I actually read it. So take this with a grain of salt that I did listen to half of this, because a lot of people really loved this book, and I read it because it was so hyped up and highly recommended. I gave it a 2-star, so yeah, but I have my reasonings. I really do. It was not a bad book, and it was not bad writing for a 2-star. I just actually couldn't wait for it to be over the whole time for some reason. I just probably wasn't in a big rom-com-y mood when I picked this book up, going from like Magnolia Parks to like wanting to get into fantasy October reads and stuff, but I really just like wasn't obsessed with it. So nothing that I was like, oh, I really like this, if that makes sense. The book is about 2 comedians. I can completely forget their names, but the male main character is the female main character's manager. He also used to be a comedian, and the male main character is also a single father. And for them being comedians, this was not funny to me at all. It was kind of like cringe funny, which I don't love. So I ended up giving this a 2 stars, but it was just like cute vibes in general, but not my favorite read. Okay, the next book I read was so fun. It's a novella in the Improbable Meet Cute series. So these are a bunch of novellas that a bunch of different famous authors came together to write. So I think they all got different prompts. Everybody's favorite authors like Christina Lauren, Abby Jimenez, Sally Thorne, Ashley Poston, all of these authors just had like different prompts, and then they wrote short novellas about these prompts, and they're all little cute bite-sized romances. And I read the first one, which is The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren, and I love this, and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did for a little novella. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it was just so fun. I read it in one night. I sat down like, what do I want to read right now? I want like a little cute palette cleanser, and this was exactly what I wanted. It was just so fun. The premise of this book is that the female main character accidentally sends a Valentine's Day email to the male main character when they are 16, or maybe even younger than that, and then they end up emailing each other on Valentine's Day every year for like 7 years, and then they eventually run into each other. Their paths cross in life in the best way. So the first 50% of this novella is entirely on email, which I wouldn't expect to love, but I did. The letters to each other were so cute. Honestly, I could have read a whole book about these characters. I really loved them, and they were so just like felt real and normal, and I loved them. And for being 100 pages, this was like the perfect amount of slow burn. It was so cute. It was so fun. Everything I wanted. And then I finally picked up One Dark Window. I have been waiting to read this for so long, but I knew I needed to read it in the fall time. This was actually in my fall reading vlog video, so if you want to see more of my reactions, you can watch that video. But I ate up this book. I loved it so much. So there is this mist in this world where it gives people a magic sickness as children, and Elspeth got the magic sickness, and it manifested in a monster being inside of her brain called the Nightmare, and it like speaks to her, it can control her, all of those things. And then there are 12 playing cards that control the magic of their world, and if they collect all 12, they can raise the mist and all be cured. That is kind of just like the fantasy premise of it all, but the vibes of the dark gothic royalty fantasy romance, everything was just so good. I loved the romance in this, and it really focused on the plot over the romance. So when you did get those like little moments of romance, they were so good. Like I was physically reacting to some of the romance scenes. I love anything with like Victorian, I don't even know if this is Victorian, I'm kind of just pulling that out of my brain from Bridgerton, but like the royalty vibes plus fantasy is just so good to me, and I've never read anything that was like dark gothic fantasy like this, so I did give this 4 stars. So good. I can't wait to read the second one. I think the second one might be my next read currently. The next book I read this month is just the most perfect October read ever, the Xhex. I highly recommend any of you to read this. Put it on your TBR for next year if you haven't read it. It's so good. It was the best spooky fun time. I feel like it was like if you take Hocus Pocus and Gilmore Girls and anything else witchy and you just wrap it up in about, this would be this book. It was just the best spooky fun time ever. I read it so fast. I was like smiling throughout the whole time. The romance was so good. It was just such a fun time, and all of the spookiness that I wanted, and like not actually scary. The main character is a witch, and she accidentally puts a hex on her ex, as you can assume, and her cousin and her aunt are also witches, and they own a little witchy store in this perfect little like Halloween town, and there's also a witch and human college, so you're just getting everything you want. You're getting like the college vibes, the witchy vibes, the like ghosts, the magic, the romance. This is just the perfect October read, and you should definitely read it. And I also gave this one 4 stars. Loved it. So good, so fun. The next book we are going to be getting into is my DNF. It is Gothicana by Runks. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but this was like the most concerning read I've ever read. It is dark academia, but I did some more research about dark academia after reading this book because I was very concerned, and this isn't like real dark academia. This is giving Wattpad in all of the Wattpad ways. Actually, that's like giving Wattpad a bad name. I'm being such a hater, I really am, but it was so cringe, so like nothing connected or made sense in like the whole storyline. So many plot holes. I got 70% to this book because I was also reading this in my fall reading vlog, so I really wanted to finish it and give you my thoughts and everything, but the main thing that made me put this down was the relationship between the female main character and the male main character was so icky, like so icky. It was like age gap, he was a professor, and he was so possessive in the ickiest ways, and she really enjoyed it. And it would have been okay if the girl like owned that she was like into the possessiveness of it all, like sure, whatever you're into, but she was like pretending to be like a strong female main character when she also had this like really not strong relationship. So it's just really concerning. Like you could look up some funny videos about some quotes from this book because they're funny. It was like hilarious how concerning things were. So DNF that book, 0 stars. Yeah, don't read it, don't recommend. But I am looking to get into like real dark academia reads. I feel like I would really like them based on what I know about them. So if you have any recommendations, like If We Were Villains or In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, I think, give me any other dark academia recommendations. I would love them and I would love to read them. Okay, and then the next 2 books, I have been waiting to read this series for so long, but I finally picked it up, and it is the Selection series. It's kind of like If The Bachelor happened, but for princess royalty. So our female main character gets invited to date the prince with like 30 other girls, and the prince has to select who he wants to be his wife and the future queen in front of their whole kingdom. And then there's also a lot of like political intrigue going on with the kingdom. These are YA, so sometimes it was a little young, but not too young at all. I really enjoyed the very slow burn of the romance, but the romance was really good. And there's also kind of a love triangle going on. I love the whole love triangle situation, and I know a lot of people hate love triangles though, but I keep flipping back and forth between who I like more. I think now I really have an idea of who I like more, but I think I might be an odd one out in the situation, so I can't wait to talk about that. Actually, I probably can't talk about that ever because it'll be a spoiler. I'll talk about it with my friends who I know have read this series. But this is probably like one of the most hyped up, well-known, most talked about series like in the book community world. So I'm really glad to have finally read it, and I think it is completely worth the hype. They're really fast-paced, really well written. The plot is such a good creative idea. I'm currently reading the 3rd book right now, so I really can't wait to see how the whole series ends. I kind of can see where it's going. It's like giving like Hunger Games in the dystopian era vibe, and I gave both the 1st and the 2nd book 4 stars. I feel like if they were one book they would have gotten 5 stars, but it was like slow burn, all this stuff happening, so some parts were a little slow, but altogether it's a 5-star. Highly recommend the Selection series. Okay, and then our 5-star of the month is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I also don't know why this is taking me so long to read. I feel like this is a whole month of like finally getting to books that are like really hyped and so talked about, but that's why it was such a good reading month. I should just read these hyped up books and not focus on ones that I know aren't gonna be as good. That's what I learned this month. But this book, guys, I have so much to say. The premise of this book is 2 doctors who work in a hospital together, and they kind of meet on the wrong foot because the male main character has anxiety and he kind of just like doesn't know how to go about a lot of social situations, and it kind of gets him into weird situations. It's Brianna and Jacob, because I can't keep saying male main character and female main character. Jacob, to apologize to Brianna, writes her a note because he's too nervous to tell her to her face that he's sorry, and then they start writing the most adorable, funny, kicking my feet, giggling notes to each other back and forth for so long. And these notes, oh my, I love them. I ate them up so fast. They were just the sweetest, cutest thing ever. And it was kind of them just like building this amazing foundation of this sweet friendship where they just like really understand each other. And like waiting to get the note back was so cute. And this book just had such an amazing representation of anxiety. I related to Jacob so deeply in so many situations. And Brianna just really took the time to understand him, understand how his mind works, understand how he's feeling in certain situations, and she just really knew him inside and out and knew what he needed, and he just loved her so much. It was just so sweet and tender. I feel like I've never said that word out loud, but like so tender. But of course there is a third act breakup situation, third act conflict. That was miscommunication, and miscommunication can get so annoying, and it was a bit annoying in this book, but I feel like the rest of it was so good, and I just related so much that it had to get a 5-star for me. So this is just I love it so much. And there's like a dog in it, and it was just all so good, and I love them, and I like wish they were real people. I feel like they're real people. This is just beautiful, and I like want to do a reread of it already. I want to just go back and like read the notes already. They were so sweet. And then the last book of the month that I read is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Yarros, and this book, another really hyped up book. We know that this is just like the month of hyped up books that I read. Rivals is so hyped for a reason. It is so good. It is such a sweet love. The premise of this book is really interesting. It's fantasy, but in like, I feel like the fantasy is kind of like not the driving force of the story, because it's kind of like historical fiction if you added, that's so incorrect because like this is not true, but it's giving historical vibes if you put fantasy in it. So Iris and Roman are our main characters, and they start out as workplace rivals, so it's kind of enemies to lovers situation going on, which we all know and love. And they both have these like magical typewriters where they can communicate with each other through these typewriters. So again, with notes, we have 3 books with notes. Do we? We have 3 books with these cute notes this month. That's such a coincidence. Well, either way, I love the notes in every single one of these books. All the books with notes, I love the most of the month. Anyways, they are writing these magical notes to each other through these magical typewriters. They're like pen pals, but they just think they're writing to someone random, and then it happens to be their workplace rival. The fantasy element is that there is this huge war going on by the gods. So it's kind of like, it's not Greek gods, but it's like if they had Greek gods, it's like their version of Greek gods. They're very similar to Greek gods. Let me not say that again. But their Greek gods are fighting, so the humans are like taking sides of what god side they're on, and since they're journalists, they end up going to be war correspondents. The war situation felt like so real, even though it was fantasy. Like I feel like it actually made me like anxious, and I feel like I gave this book 4 stars, spoiler alert, and I feel like if the war didn't make me so like nervous, I would have given it 5 stars. And I know it's supposed to make you nervous, and I read like Throne of Glass, which is like the most high stakes, like it's like gory, the most war, like didn't make me like anxious like that for some reason. I think because it's like so fantasy, I can like deal with it there, but I don't know if I was in like a weird headspace or something, but I was nervous for them. Okay, I feel like they felt like really real people, and they were just like so vulnerable. They were just journalists, not like soldiers or anything, so I was just nervous for them. And how it all comes together is beautiful. It is just like a beautiful story, and the like historical fiction, I feel like I might be dumb saying that, like it's obviously not historical fiction, it's like a fantasy book, but the historical elements that aren't real, I really enjoyed. I think the other reason I gave it 4 stars and not 5 stars is it was a slow burn, but then once it got to the romance, it was like, we're moving quickly. Once we figured things out and once we were like confessing our love, they moved really quickly. So I don't know, something about that kind of put me off. But beautiful, beautiful story. I loved it. 4 stars is like, I am very selective with my 5 stars, so this was just like such a good book in general, such a good reading month in general. But yeah, those are the 10 books that I read in October. Such a good reading month. I can't believe I had like majority 4-star reads this whole month, which was so nice. But if you read any of these books, so let me know how you also felt about it. You can follow my Goodreads, I'll follow you back, we'll be friends. And I love talking about books with anyone who will listen or wants to chat. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week with another one.